Donald Trump's White House has never been in a greater state of collapse or chaos, and oh boy does that bring a smile to my face, because tonight, by signing the bill to release the Epstein files, Donald Trump has sealed his own fate. He will pretend that he is all for transparency and that this was his idea from the beginning, but we know that is not the case. The public sentiment has overwhelmingly told Donald Trump that we know he is responsible for the cover-up that has happened and that will continue to happen, and everyone in his administration is complicit, including Stephen Miller, who went silent today, unable to speak when caught in the cover-up after the signing of the Epstein release. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, the Epstein files are not officially released. Donald Trump will continue to put roadblocks in place, and that is why, before we get to Stephen Miller, I want to start with what Robert Garcia has had to say about exactly that.
In the law that was passed in the Connor and Massey bill, there is a provision in there that essentially speaks to that the Department of Justice is able to possibly withhold some materials if there is an ongoing federal investigation. This has been discussed at length, and so folks are worried, is Pam Bondi, is Donald Trump, are they launching an investigation, particularly this one against Democrats, to use it as a way to stop the release of the files and of this bill? And that is a critical concern. What has not been discussed in the last few days, and we've been focused on this bill, I want to remind the Attorney General and the public that our subpoena does not have that language. And so if the Attorney General wants to use her sham investigation in the Southern District of New York to withhold evidence and documents on the bill that the president will hopefully just about to sign, she can't do the same for our subpoena. She is still legally obligated, regardless of any investigation, to produce every single document, photo, video, or material that she has in her possession of the DOJ to the Oversight Committee. That's something that we have not talked about a lot in the last few days because our focus is on this bill. But you can believe that in the next few days and weeks ahead, we're going to remind the DOJ that her investigation she might try to use to stop the effort in the full House, she can't use that to stop the effort we have in the Oversight Committee.
Donald Trump is going to put every roadblock in place possible. I will continue to say this, but now more than ever, we have to be focused in talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And as I've said all along, I do believe that what's not in these files might be as damaging, if not more so, than what is in the files. And what I mean by that is we need to continue to subpoena the Epstein estate. There needs to be more interviews. All of the documents that the Treasury has, we need to follow the money. We need to be looking into it all. And Pam Bondi is going to do her best, certainly over the next 30 days, but for the rest of this administration, honestly, up until the midterms when Democrats really drop the hammer on this whole operation, they're going to be panicking, they are going to be scrambling, and they are going to want to deflect our attention. Why do you think Donald Trump continues to say that he told Republicans to release the Epstein files? Why is that? Because he wants you to believe that he was the one doing it and that the Epstein files are released. And you haven't seen anything, so why even care? It's because they are going to block it all. But there's something that they can't block, and it's other people continuing to talk, which is what Epstein's brother did tonight before we get into Stephen Miller.
No, not whatsoever. Jeff and Donald were very good friends through the 90s, and I don't know exactly when it ended, maybe 2004 or something, but they were really good friends. You know, they used to fly in each other's planes. Like I said, they say Donald was on Jeff's plane like 7 times, but I question, have they checked Donald's flight logs from those days?
This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say what is outside the purview of the Epstein files right now. Of course, those flight logs were released and they were redacted. And funny enough, Donald Trump redacted his own name from the Epstein flight logs, but he didn't redact his daughter's name. So it said Ivanka Trump. It didn't say Donald's name. But those files are a perfect example of the type of fake slop that Donald Trump and Pam Bondi are going to push. A bunch of redacted files, a bunch of files that we can't trust, but what we can trust is what continues to come from the Epstein estate, what Democrats have been able to subpoena and have been able to release. It is important that we continue to get those documents as we push for maximum transparency and make sure that Pam Bondi is well aware that if she is not complicit, with what will hopefully and soon be a court overseeing the release of these files, she is breaking the law, and there will be accountability. There must be this sentiment from Democrats that I've seen from Eric Swalwell saying, if you are a part of this cover-up, which all of them are, save your emails, save your text, everything you've written on paper about this, because we are going to come down on you. Everyone is complicit. Stephen Miller knows that, and that's why when he was asked about Trump signing the files just a couple of hours ago, he had this to say.
Is the president signing the Epstein files bill, and is it at his desk already?
So any questions about that? I have nothing to add to today. I think the White House comm shop's already answered all those questions, yes?
Can you tell us the latest on whether the Trump administration...
That was just a few short hours ago. Stephen Miller was asked about the release of the files. He had no idea what to say. He didn't want to say anything. Of course, Donald Trump went on to sign the bill to force the release of the files. But either Stephen Miller wasn't informed, which I don't believe because Stephen Miller runs the White House, or they were all so terrified of the media finding out what was happening tonight. Because mind you, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, they put a lid on the White House today, which means they canceled all events. They kicked the press out. No one was allowed to be there. So Stephen Miller was probably well aware of this. He didn't want to tip anyone off, but he was too scared to say anything. Too scared of what? Transparency. He didn't want the media to know because he is complicit in the cover-up. He is being caught in the cover-up. Stephen Miller is as involved as everybody, as anybody. If you believe, as I do, that Stephen Miller is running the White House, Stephen Miller is also running this cover-up operation, and he was too scared to say anything. Sure, when it's Fox and it's Will Cain and it's daytime, he'll go on and he'll yell and he'll scream and he says Democrats are Antifa and communist and whatever else he wants to say. But when it comes to the Epstein files, I'd take note that Stephen Miller is choosing his words very, very carefully. Why is Stephen Miller doing that? Why is Stephen Miller, who I would say is one of the more adept players in this administration, he knows what's going on. I don't want to give him credit. He's not a smart or good guy, but he does know where the pieces are. Why is Stephen Miller choosing his words so carefully? Why is he so afraid to speak? Why wouldn't he say anything? Again, one, the obvious answer is because they didn't want to tip the media off to what was happening today. But I think Miller also understands the accountability that's coming and that they can't dig themselves out of this hole. That is for certain. And Jessica Tarlov broke it all down right here. You're going to want to hear every word she says, not only because it pisses off Jesse Waters, but because it is so important.
But this idea that the Epstein files is going to be reframed as a Democratic hoax is never going to work. The American public is not cool with it. What does he have? Trump has a minus 39 approval on handling the Epstein files, and only 45% of Republicans even approve at this point. The narrative about Hakeem Jeffries, everyone at this table knows how fundraising emails work. So that email was from someone named Lisa Rossi, who's from a random fundraising group called Dynamic SRG, asking if Epstein wants to go to a generic DCCC dinner that Obama and Jeffries were going to be at. There was never any meeting. There was never any donation. And he appears one time in the Epstein files. By the Miami Herald's count, Trump is mentioned over 1,000 times in the latest tranche that just got out. And people are not going to forget that in 2002, for instance, Trump said, I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do. And many of them are on the younger side. I have never alleged, and I am not alleging now, that Donald Trump has done anything untoward with an underage woman. But if you want to be throwing around single emails from a random fundraising group to try to make Brooklyn Barack look bad and not acknowledge how many times Donald Trump is mentioned in these files, you're just going to look dumb. And I would encourage everyone to not look dumb.
But it's other people mentioning him. It's not his fault when people want to get him.
I just read a quote.
Well, that was one quote,
about
but other people are mentioning it to stop him. They're like the other person. They were all trying to stop Trump.
Why did he want the files to not come out this badly? Why? Just tell me why.
Why do you always fall for this stuff is the bigger question.
Happening again. This is Russia, Ukraine, everything.
I don't think this is the...
There is an attempt to rewrite history that is happening right now. And you see it in the post that Donald Trump made about the release of the Epstein files. He said that he directed Republicans in the House and the Senate to vote for the release, and that is why it happened. That is fundamentally untrue. Why the Epstein files were released, why that vote happened in the House and the Senate, is because Republicans recognize the weakness of Donald Trump, his inability to tell them what to do. But Trump wants to take credit. Johnson wants to take credit. Thune wants to take credit. They want to wash away their sins and pretend that they were on board the entire time. We know that's not the case. We know what role they played in the constant obstruction of the release of these files that has been going on for months now. They have called it a distraction. They have called it a hoax. They have called it every name in the book to get it off of Donald Trump's desk. But that is where it fell tonight. And Donald Trump cannot escape what has happened to his term, what has happened to his administration. It has been consumed by Epstein. It has been consumed by the first ever issue that his cultists do not have a positive approval of him on. This is worse than January 6th somehow for Donald Trump. This is worse than January 6th. There's no coming back on Epstein. There is no rewriting the history. There is no screaming Barack Hussein Obama. It's not going to save him this time. And he knows that. Again, it's why he shut out the press tonight. You're going to want to hear this.
So where is the bill? Is it at the White House?
Pamela, that's the question we've all been trying to get to the bottom of. We have about 10 White House producers and reporters who have been asking all of their sources, when is he going to sign the bill? Is the bill even at the White House? All to at least mostly radio silence. Stephen Miller.
He kicked the press out of the White House. Let me say it again. He kicked the press out of the White House. Now, why did Donald Trump do that? Why did Donald Trump kick the press out of the White House? Well, I think the answer is pretty apparent, because he knows what they would have covered. They would have covered the state of chaos. They would have covered the ketchup on the walls. They would have covered the meetings that were happening before that pen hit that paper, which is how are we going to move forward? And how they will move forward is by covering it up. I'm going to continue to say this in every video in which I talk about Epstein, and it is not a warning for you, because I know if you are watching this now, you have been in this fight the whole time. It is a broader warning. Now is the time to talk about Epstein more so than any other point in this entire administration. The cover-up is happening, not just of what they've done in the past couple of months, but what they did in the first administration as well. And we need to call them out. We're going to on this show. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.